Before we begin, just a quick heads up. This story is based on real events. It's personal and raw. If you've ever ignored your gut feeling, this one might hit close to home. Welcome to the channel Echoes of the Past. Hi, my name is Sophie Walters. I'm 34 and I live in New Orleans. My life seemed pretty straightforward before that day. The typical whirlwind of work, home, and occasional get-togethers with friends. I'd been married to my husband Ethan for almost 7 years, and I thought we had a solid relationship. You know, the kind where you believe you know everything about the other person, the kind where you trust that nothing could shake that foundation. But I was wrong. It all began with a party. Ethan and I had hosted a casual gathering at our house on a warm summer evening. Our friends were over, the music was playing softly in the background, and everything felt normal. But something was off. There was this subtle shift in the air, a kind of heavy silence that seemed to blanket the atmosphere. It wasn't loud or obvious, but I felt it the moment I stepped into the backyard. And that's when I noticed her. Her name was Olivia. I had never seen her before, but the way everyone reacted when she entered the backyard made it clear she wasn't just another guest. Ethan's face, which had been relaxed just moments before, tightened in a way I couldn't ignore. He tried to hide it, but I noticed. She walked in confidently, but there was something about the way she looked at Ethan that struck me as too familiar, a bit too comfortable. I hadn't even fully processed the situation when Ethan stepped forward, pulling her into a hug that lasted just a little too long. My stomach dropped. I could feel the sting of jealousy creeping up, but I brushed it off at first. Maybe I was just being paranoid. It's funny how the mind plays tricks on you, making you second-guess your own instincts. I went to grab a drink, trying to push aside the uneasy feeling building in my chest. But something about this woman kept pulling me back. As I moved through the crowd, I overheard a conversation between two of Ethan's closest friends. Their words, though hushed, were impossible to ignore. "I don't know how she doesn't see it," one of them said. "Ethan's been at her for months. It's getting out of hand." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My thoughts raced, and my heart started pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ethan, my husband, had been hiding something from me, something I had no clue about. I turned around, scanning the yard for Ethan, but he wasn't where I'd last seen him. Instead, I saw him talking to Olivia in the corner of the patio, laughing. The kind of laugh he used to share only with me. A wave of anger surged through me. I was no longer questioning what I'd heard. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore. This was real, and it was happening in front of my eyes. I had to act fast. I couldn't let my emotions control me, not yet. Not here, in front of everyone. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I took a deep breath and walked to the other side of the yard, trying to compose myself. I didn't want to make a scene, not just yet. I needed answers first. I told myself I would confront Ethan later, in private when we were alone. But that was before Olivia, with her perfectly styled hair and air of superiority, took a step closer to me. She smiled politely, but I could see the look in her eyes. It wasn't just friendly. It was knowing. I didn't let on that I'd overheard the conversation, but the more I watched her, the more everything started to make sense. Ethan's sudden late nights, the strange texts, the quiet whispers between him and his friends whenever I was around, they'd all been hiding it. And Olivia, standing there in front of me with her perfect smile, was the final piece of the puzzle. She leaned in a little closer and spoke, her voice soft but deliberate. "You've been such a good wife to him," she said, her eyes glinting. "But sometimes people need more than what you're giving them." The words hit like a slap. More than what I'm giving them? Was that what Ethan had been looking for? I froze. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but something told me that if I lashed out now, I wouldn't get the truth. Not from her, and not from him. "Excuse me," I said coldly, before turning on my heel and walking away. The anger I felt was suffocating, but I kept my composure, as if everything was normal. As if nothing was wrong. But nothing would ever be normal again. I found myself standing near the edge of the pool, looking at the water like it could somehow cleanse me of the chaos I felt swirling inside. I didn't know what to do next. Confronting Ethan in front of all these people felt impossible, but ignoring the truth wasn't an option either. I stayed there for what felt like hours, trying to calm myself, trying to gather the courage to face him. But every time I thought about speaking to him, my mind raced with the words I'd overheard, with the realization of what had been happening behind my back. How long had he been seeing Olivia? Was she the only one? The quiet hum of the party continued around me, but I was no longer part of it. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, it all felt distant, like I was watching from outside my own life. It felt like everyone was in on something I wasn't aware of, like I was the last to know. I saw Ethan then, across the yard, laughing with his friends. They didn't know I was watching, but I could tell he wasn't the same man I married. His face was more relaxed, more confident, but there was something about his posture, the way he was leaning toward his friends, his easy smile, that made me feel like a stranger was standing in front of me. It hit me. He was never going to be the man I thought he was. Maybe he never was. I turned my gaze away, feeling the weight of what I had to do next. No more pretending, no more waiting for the right moment. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. As I stepped back inside the house, my heart pounded against my chest. I could still feel the lingering tension in the air, the heat of unspoken truths that were just waiting to be uncovered. The kitchen felt suffocatingly small, the buzzing sound of the fridge almost mocking the silence that had taken over the house. I needed to find him. I needed to hear it from his mouth. I walked through the hall, trying to steady my breath. I couldn't afford to lose control, not yet. Not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. As I neared the living room, I saw Ethan again, his arm around Olivia, leaning in too close. The sight of them together made my stomach churn. It felt like a dagger to the heart. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. I stepped forward, not even thinking about it. I could hear my own voice in my head, pushing me to speak, to end this madness before I let it consume me. I wanted to ask him if she was the reason I'd been living in a lie for the past year. But I held back, just for a moment, because there was something more I needed to understand first. Before I could make my way over to them, Olivia turned her head, catching my eye. She smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that said she knew exactly what was happening, like she'd been waiting for this moment. She walked over to me. "Madison," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I'm so glad you could make it. Ethan's been telling me so much about you." The words hit me like a cold wave. I could barely process what she was saying. Was she really trying to be polite? Was this how she planned to play it? I forced myself to smile back, but I knew it was fake. I couldn't pretend anymore. Not now. "Olivia," I said, my voice steady but cold. "You should have told me. I would have appreciated the honesty." Her smile faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered, her gaze shifting toward Ethan, who was now standing a few feet away. It was like a signal, her eyes meeting his, and suddenly, the pretense was gone. "I wasn't the one who needed to tell you, Madison," she said, her tone dripping with venom, "but I couldn't wait anymore. He wasn't going to say anything, so I thought I'd do you the favor." Her words hit me like a blow, but I didn't let her see it. Instead, I held my ground, taking a deep breath and forcing myself to stay composed. I wasn't going to let her see the hurt, the anger, or the disappointment she was so eager to provoke. Ethan was watching now, standing in the corner of the room with his arms crossed. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, those damn eyes, told a story of guilt and shame. He wasn't sorry, not for a second. He wasn't going to apologize, and he certainly wasn't going to make this easy for me. I turned away from Olivia and walked towards him. I needed to hear it from him. I needed him to admit it. "Ethan," I said, my voice low but firm. "Is this really happening? Are you really standing there, letting her tell me the truth?" His expression darkened, and for a moment I thought he might try to explain himself. Maybe he'd offer some kind of justification. Maybe he'd try to make excuses. But he didn't. Instead, He just nodded, his eyes avoiding mine. Madison, he started, but the words trailed off. There was nothing he could say that would make this any better. I trusted you, I whispered, the weight of the betrayal crushing down on me. I trusted you with everything. And this is how you repay me? His silence said everything. There was no apology, no remorse. Just the same empty look he always wore when he thought he could get away with anything. And I realized, right then, that I had spent years loving someone who never truly loved me back. I took one last look at him, at the man I had once called my husband, and I knew that this was the end. There was nothing left here, nothing left to save. Turning to Olivia, I said, I don't know what you think you've won, but this is over. All of it. Ethan, you made your choice, and I'm making mine. The room was quiet for a long moment. Ethan didn't say anything. Olivia didn't move, but I could feel the shift inside of me. I was no longer the woman who was willing to turn a blind eye to what was happening. I was no longer the woman who would forgive and forget. I was done. I was taking my life back. As I walked out the door, I didn't look back. Not at Ethan, not at Olivia. I just kept walking, knowing that the hardest part was over. I was free, and nothing at all, would ever take that away from me. If this story resonated with you, you're not alone. Sometimes the truth breaks us, so we can rebuild. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard. See you in the next one.